Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic and I hope you're safe and warm. I've heard that this cold in the south is actually killing people and that sucks. So I hope wherever you are, it's all good. Everything here, it is cold. It's actually cold in here right now. I haven't run the heater. I might do some work down here later. I haven't decided. We'll figure that out. But first off, I want to say thank you for the comments on yesterday's video talking about tools. Also, thank you to those of you who've gone and checked out the other channel and who've subscribed. That really makes me feel special, really means a lot to know that I have at least a couple of people who are going to watch videos when I launch them, and it's not just going into the void. There will be more projects coming. I'm currently editing one that I hope to put up soon. There's no schedule on that channel. There's no promises. I'm not saying that I'm going to do anything. I'm just going to put videos there when I feel like putting videos there, and they're videos that I want to exist and not get flooded in the chaff that is this channel. This channel has a purpose. This channel was built for this purpose, daily videos. That channel is built to just put stuff up when I want to that will persist and not get flooded by this noise, right? Because that's what this is. But I want to backtrack a little tiny bit on what I said yesterday. I talked yesterday about you have to just try things. You just have to go for it. And Matt, if you're watching this video and you figure out a way to make a physical triangle, please let me know. That'd be awesome. I would love to have that. So besides that, I said that in order to try, you don't know what you don't know. That's the problem. And the best way to learn what you don't know is to do it. And the best way to do it is to spend as little money as possible to try. And that might mean you don't buy anything. You might want to look and see if there are places near you where you can go visit and use their tools. There might be a makerspace. There might be a cabinet shop that does lessons. There might be a way for you to spend very, very little money and make a project and just see if it's for you that involves you buying no tools. Try that out. Or you might know a friend who has a shop, who says, come on over, let's do this. And we'll teach you what they know, and you'll get a chance to play with tools and see if it works for you. I said buy the cheapest, and that's very, very true with a few limited exceptions. And I'd like to thank Matt for pointing out sandpaper. Do not buy cheap sandpaper. What he considers cheap is relative. He says he doesn't buy the brownback stuff. I'll show you that. This is Walmart's all-purpose. This is 3M brand, but you can get this at Walmart. It does clog quickly. You will go through a sheet pretty quickly, but it's really inexpensive, and I don't mind that. When I say don't buy cheap, I mean don't buy the dollar store stuff. You can buy sandpaper at the dollar store. I bought some. I think I showed it off here. It was one of those things I bought just to try, and I believe I threw it all away because it's absolute garbage. Like the moment you touch the sandpaper down, just the grit falls off. It doesn't work. Don't buy cheap sandpaper. Learning to sand with good quality sandpaper will change your world because it is a tedious task. It is a very tedious task. And I cut out a section of my video yesterday on how to use a power sander because I think people have a very bad idea of the correct way to use this based on what they see on YouTube. And I'm probably going to do a video on the other channel soon about how to use a power sander because you might be using it wrong. That being said, the only sandpaper I use, I know I just pulled this out of a closet in a cabinet and showed it to you, but I very rarely use this. The only sandpaper I use is the hook and loop sandpaper for my disc sanders. I buy this in bulk on Amazon. This is not a name brand. This is, I'll put a link in the description. I buy bulk sets when I start getting low on everything, and then often I will have to refill 150 and 220. I use those the most. So I only ever use this to sand, even hand sanding. And I have a couple of sanding blocks like this little guy that has a hook and loop on it and a bunch of dust in it. You can put your sandpaper on there and sand away. There's also like a little mouse version that you put the sandpaper on and fold the sides up and you have a good block sander. This is all I use just simply because it cuts down on consumables that I have to keep track of and store. I now have a mouse sander, and I have a rack over here. You can't see it on camera. I have a little shelf system that I made to hold the different grits of these. I'm going to have to do something similar for my mouse sander, and maybe they make little sanding doohickeys for mouse sanding pads, and I might have to pick those up in the future so that I can, but buy decent sandpaper. Again, I will post a link to the sandpaper that I buy off of Amazon. I've never had a problem with it. It does clog up. It's cheap. Throw it away, get a new piece. That's the other thing. I would say don't use your sandpaper to death. You're just killing yourself. Get a fresh piece. It's cheap. Okay? And I'll post a link. I think I got these on Amazon. I'm pretty sure I did. I'll post a link to these guys in case you want to pick up some little from Amazon. Matt also suggested table saw blades. Buy the correct table saw blades for the procedure that you're doing. If you don't know, there are a bunch of different types of table saw blades. You can get cross-cutting blades. You can get ripping blades. You can get combination blades, sheet goods, plastics, metals, skip tooths, flat grind, a whole bunch of different blades. Matt suggests using the correct blade for the job that you're doing. What that generally means is that you have a ripping blade and you have a cross-cutting blade. I don't think I have examples to show you. I kind of do. I don't. What you'll typically see is like a 25-ish, 24 tooth blade is used for ripping. A 40 tooth or maybe even a 60 tooth for cross-cutting. The 60 tooth is generally for sheet goods like plywood. And the reason is when you're ripping, you're going with the grain, it's much easier to cut. And the tendency is to feed your board through pretty quick because it can go quick. And if you're using a blade that has a whole lot of teeth, the little gullets get filled with sawdust super fast and it causes burning. So use a 24 tooth blade and you won't have that problem. You'll be able to just cut as fast as you want and it'll clear the sawdust and you're fine. Definitely don't use a 60 tooth blade ripping. It would just be a nightmare. You're going to have smoke and fire maybe. I don't know. But for cross-cutting, going against the grain, when the blade is cutting the fibers, you want to use as many teeth as possible to take smaller bites, tiny bites, and it'll clear itself out and all that bull stuff. I have never used those. Well, that's not true. I used to use a combination, or I used to use a ripping blade for ripping and like a 40 tooth for cross-cutting, and I stopped doing that, and I now just have a general purpose 40 tooth blade. And what that basically means for me is I take slower rips. I don't shove the material through the saw as fast as it'll take it. I take it slow. I don't get the burn marks, and except for like hard maple, which I don't know that you're ever going to get rid of burn marks in hard maple, and maybe some really dense oak, like white oak. I just keep the general purpose blade. I found that switching out was not worth my time, and generally when I'm working on a project, I don't cut a whole bunch of parts at once because I like to take relative measurements. I don't go by plans, which means that I'm not going to cut all these parts only to find out that, oh, in the end they needed to all be a 1/16 of an inch shorter and I have to go modify them, switch blades back and forth. I don't do that. I just use a general purpose blade. But price matters. I used to use whatever was available at Walmart or my local True Value, like the Milwaukee blade. It's on my miter saw, or even the Walmart branded blades that come in 3-packs. I used to use those a lot, and they were fine until like 2 years ago. Jonathan bought me. You should know Jonathan by now. He's on every video. He comments every video. Jonathan bought me a Freud 40 tooth combination blade. That was a game changer. It's a $60 blade, but let me tell you, it is phenomenal at all of the things I've just talked about. It will cut perfectly nice cuts on just about everything. So I would say spend the extra money if you're going to buy the tools and buy what works. The other thing I want to say is the wood. Depending on the project, pine is actually not very user-friendly. It's very easy to mess up with pine. It's very easy to get blowout that you will not get with other woods. That being said, with hardwoods, it's much easier to get blowout from driving in fasteners, screws, nails, that sort of stuff. Pine will take that fine, but when I'm talking blowout, I mean blowout from cutting. If you're trying to chisel, pine is a nightmare to attempt to carve. I would never suggest carving. It doesn't route very nice. It blows all over the place. It's actually a bit of a handicap if you're trying to do, quote, fine woodworking with pine. It's actually more difficult to work with pine. You know, you don't cut dovetails in pine. I mean, you can. It's just much harder to cut dovetails in pine than it is an actual hardwood. So I would say do a little bit of research when you're doing material selection based on the project that you want to build. But again, pick a project, buy what you need for that project. You don't need to fill a workshop full of tools to build a bread box. You just don't. You could do it with a handsaw. The video that I posted where I cut the bevels on the table saw for my flower pots, you could do this with a miter box. The thing was 3 inches deep. Most miter boxes are that deep. You could cut these just fine with a $10 miter box from Lowe's and get by. So be cheap, but there are a few things that matter. If you think of anything else that matters, please put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is ensconce. It is a verb meaning to settle oneself warmly or snugly or to hide something in a secure place. Julia ensconced herself in a leather chair in the family's library and perused recent catalogs. Ensconce. E-N-S-C-O-N-C-E. Is that like the root of that tied to like a sconce? Like, isn't a sconce like a wall-mounted candelabra? I don't know.